Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Rise News. Now, the off-cycle elections in Imo, Bayelsa and Kogi State have finally been conducted, and all that's left is the official announcement of winners after our collation has been completed. Heading into the election, all attention had been on how the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, and security agencies will conduct the electoral process. Joining us to take a look at the performance of the INEC and the security agencies is Andrew Mwata, a former Edo Commissioner of Communications and Orientation and a law lecturer. We want to say thank you very much for joining us here on the Morning Show. Welcome. To get this started, I would say, what's your assessment of the...
Thank you for having me.
Okay. What's your assessment of the off-cycle elections that took place yesterday in Imo, Bayelsa, and Kogi states?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. It's more like what we have always had in Nigeria, nothing really new. I'm sorry to say that even some of the places where election took place, like Kogi, we had situations where election results were even out before the process started. And I think it gives a whole lot of feeling that our electoral process is still not grown to a point where Nigerians will be allowed to decide who leads them. And I think if you look at our own constitutional architecture, it places sovereignty in the hands of the people. But unfortunately, you find that INEC now plays almost a pioneering or a leading role, and in some cases, even our courts. Remember in Bayelsa, it was even close to the election, the court now decided if Silva was a candidate of the APC. So I think some of these are the problems that we face currently in Nigeria, particularly the problem of vote buying, the problem of rigging, and falsification of election results. And I think there's need for holistic reform. In the US, they have off-year election in places like Ohio, Kentucky, and Virginia. If you compare that with what is happening in Nigeria, you find that we are miles away from what an electoral process should be in terms of its credibility, in terms of its acceptance, and in terms of if the people are actually part of the process. And I also noticed this problem of voter apathy. A place like Imo, I was listening to the election results. A local government like Bayelsa, a place close to Owerri, you had the total number of registered voters there, I think 153,283. And when you look at the number of accredited voters, below 25,000. That is to say, less than a quarter of registered voters came out to vote. And that brings us to the question of what factors really trigger voter apathy in Nigeria. The first, as I've earlier mentioned, is the problem of electoral malpractice. We also have this issue of poor voter education. How many of our people know the benefits of participating in the electoral process? Most people get their PVCs just for purposes of identification. They want to open a bank account, so they need to get a PVC. And I think it is an aberration for us to have a system where we have registered voters who don't come out to vote. And also we have this problem of a weak political culture. Most political parties don't have ideology. I mentioned the 3 elections that took place in America. The off-year election that took place in America. The issue of abortion access became a critical one. And if you notice from the results, a state like Ohio, the Democrats won there because they promised putting that in their constitution in the state, and constitution in Ohio. And that also played out in Kentucky. Then in Virginia, the Democrats cleared the entire state in the state Senate. So for us in Nigeria, where are we? The problem of insecurity is also there. I mentioned Imo. You have this problem of IPOB. In the Northeast, you have the problem of Boko Haram. People are scared to come out to vote. The issue of the use of thugs. We saw a situation where a voter, or rather a ballot box snatcher was shot. How about a situation where that becomes a stray bullet? In the recent election in Edo, we had many cases of people who came out to vote and they died in the process of coming out. So I think that accounts for why we have voter apathy. Running through these variables is the problem of corruption. INEC officials are corrupt. I'm sorry to say university lecturers, as an academic, it's quite sad that people who are part of this process are university lecturers. So what role do they play? So the problem of corruption, it's key in identifying why we have the kind of situation we presently have in Nigeria.
Okay, so Andrew, thanks for coming on the show this morning. It's good to hear you talk about the election from yesterday, and it's obvious that you've been monitoring what's going on.